Baldur's Gate 3 just released a 21 gig update with a ton of new quality life changes and new content. What's up everyone, Big Dan here. I make videos about Baldur's Gate 3 and other RPGs. And in this video, we're going to go over the patch notes and new content that you can expect to see in Baldur's Gate 3 Patch 6. So we kick off the patch notes with some important changes to romance. We've made improvements to locking lips with your chosen romantic partner. All characters now have unique kisses that reflect their personality, with an emphasis on the plural. These kisses are randomized and vary from the incredibly romantic to the, little more intense. Kisses have also been improved for shorter and taller body types, so embrace without delay. So we'll see the dwarves getting a little bit more love without awkward cutscenes. Okay, cool. So, I think a lot of people are going to love this. I like seeing these quality of life adjustments and little details that they put in things like the romance and the relationships, because obviously that's a big part of the role-playing in this game, and a lot of Baldur's Gate 3 players really gravitate towards the romantic relationships in this game, so it's cool to see them putting these little attentions to detail in the game. In addition to improved smooches, we've also improved some of our endgame cinematics to better reflect the connection between players and their partners. Love truly has been in the air in the office, or perhaps it's something in our air fresheners. Larian also made a number of changes to things that happen at your party camp and some other quality of life features that we're going to dive into in terms of switching characters. Every whittle helps, new camp animations and improvements. While exploring your campsite, you'll notice new idle animations for some of your companions. Not everyone enjoys standing around, and these behaviors should help your campsite feel more alive. Though we wouldn't interrupt Shadowheart when she's polishing her spear. In addition, you'll now be able to dismiss a party member while speaking to the party member you want to replace them with, so no more going back and forth like a Machiavellian party planner. This is so good. Oh my god, that was one of my biggest gripes in terms of quality of life with Baldur's Gate 3, is that when you wanted to swap out different characters, you'd have to run to the character you wanted to get out of your party, dismiss them, and then go to a separate character that you wanted to add. It was too much. Like, I would have preferred a party select screen personally, but being able to just do it in one conversation instead of running all over the camp for multiple conversations, that's definitely an improvement. Improvements and fixes galore. Patch 6 isn't all about ambience and canoodling though. We fixed a deluge of player-reported issues, Shield Bash fans rejoice, and made several tweaks and improvements to the game. If you're playing in Honor mode, expect a few surprises in the form of new legendary action for bosses, and maybe a bit of extra trouble from a certain mound. Good luck with that one. So it seems like they're buffing some of the bosses in Honor mode, so that'll be definitely interesting to dive into. We've also made some improvements to speaker selection. This is the one I've been really looking for. When dialogue triggers automatically, the game will now try to prioritize your avatar as the main speaker, so your party members should have less main character syndrome when you're clearly the star of the show. Oh, thank God. This was something that bothered me so much throughout my multiple playthroughs of this game, is you'd be running around and you'd trigger a cutscene and then a random party member would be the one steering the dialogue. Now, I like to play as a charismatic character and put a lot of points into charisma, persuasion, and that sort of thing. So I was always frustrated if one of my party members who didn't have those skills ended up speaking in a really important cutscene, because I would always try to, roll the dice and go for persuasion whenever those options were available. So thank God we'll be able to do that. I love Jaheira, but I don't exactly want her negotiating a hostage crisis. You know what I'm saying? Now, I am curious to see how often it prioritizes it, because it does say it will try to prioritize your avatar. So I imagine if you've completely split up your party and, your main character's off at camp and the rest of your party's out in the world, that's not going to work. But I'm curious to see how this actually plays out in action and how much it will actually prioritize your main character. So now we have a really important note about mod compatibility. We continue to work on future updates to Baldur's Gate 3 with further improvements, fixes, and patches yet to come, but before we dive into the full highlights for Patch 6, a warning about mods. If you experience issues after installing our latest update, please check whether the issue persists with mods uninstalled. Currently, mods aren't officially supported, so more mods may become temporarily incompatible with new patches and hotfixes. If you continue having issues after uninstalling all mods, yes, even that one, please reach out to our support team. Patch 6 will be going live today on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox, and will require approximately 150 gig of free space to install for those players playing on PC and Steam Deck. So I installed this update earlier today on Steam, and it was only about 17 gigs, the actual update size. I already had the game installed, so I didn't have to worry worry about having quite as much free space, but that's worth keeping in mind if you have a slow internet connection, for instance. The rest of the section will cover some things that are spoilers for the story. Now, this game has been out for about 6 months now, so I assume many of you watching this video will have already completed the story, but in case you haven't, be mindful that we're going to be getting into some spoiler territory here. So here are some more highlights from patch 6. Improve the cinematic scene in the Elf Song Tavern to feel more intimate when you and your romance partner decide your future together after defeating the Netherbrain. I think I've only seen one of these scenes so far, and it was with Mind Flayer Karlach, actually. I'm definitely interested to play through the ending of the game with some of my other romance companions and see how those scenes play out. Rework the reflection scenes that take place after wrapping up the defeat of the Netherbrain for characters without romantic partners to better match the scenes for those who do have romantic partners and bridge the gap into the epilogue. Patch 6 also makes some changes to Night Song's quest, added a new cinematic scene to support the combat encounter that occurs after you choose whether to side with Night Song at Sorcerer Sundries or not. We've already touched on this, but here are some of the idle animations that are added into the game for companions at camp. Lae'zel studying a Githyanki disc, Minthara contemplating a skull, tending to mushrooms, expressing violence, adjusting her armor, plotting her future, and being bothered by the sun. Jaheira sitting, kneeling, and whispering to a rat messenger, and whittling. Minsk cooking and shaving his head. These are two separate animations, although we wouldn't put it past him. He's not, in fact, cooking his head. Shadowheart polishing the Spear of Night. Halsin whittling, of course. And then we get into some of the bug fixes here. Fixed an issue that would prevent travel between acts. Fixed an issue causing quick saves to fail to upload to cross saves. Characters in the epilogue camp party will now have fitting titles below their names. Fixed the shield bash and rebuke of the mighty passives not triggering after saving throws. Okay, this one's really cool. If you romance Lae'zel, grab a red dragon and saddle up, you can now join her in the rebellion against Vlaakith, even if you are not Gith yourself. That is awesome. That's going to be cool to see. That was one of my favorite moments of Act 3, was seeing Lae'zel get the silver sword, and then later being able to become a dragon rider and go take the fight to Vlaakith. That was such a badass moment that brought a little bit of a tear to my Okay, here's a new mechanic for long resting. If you long rest with only alcohol as camp supplies, you will now get the new Hangover condition for 10 turns. That's kind of funny. Auto-selecting your camp supplies before a long rest will now use resources more optimally. Sometimes you just don't feel like cooking. Oh man, it's so funny that the auto-select would sometimes add like 60 camp supplies to your thing. So I do hope they've kind of adjusted that to be more closer to the optimal amount that you need to actually rest. The long rest camp supply menu is now better at pulling supplies from inside containers in companion inventory. Stop hoarding the cheese, Will. Scratch can no longer equip certain weapons like the Everburn blade. That's so funny. I can't imagine giving the dog that gigantic flaming sword. That's hilarious. So here was something hinted at earlier in the notes. The Shambling Mound is now a fully fledged honor mode boss with brand new bespoke legendary actions and tuned up abilities. Good luck! The Drider and Dror Ragzlin have new legendary actions in honor mode. In Tactician mode, the Drider has a special sanctuary called Spindleweb Sanctuary that erupts in a psychic explosion when the status condition ends. In addition, his Spindleweb Fanaticism aura will now debuff his enemies. In Tactician mode, Dror Ragzlin's Leadership aura will now also debuff his enemies. Jaheira could be in bad shape by the time she arrived at Moonrise Tower since she has already had to fight. Now she's smart enough to heal up before she goes there, which we're hoping lets her last at least an additional second in combat. Yeah, Jaheira, when she gets tacked on as a party member when you go into Moonrise Towers, she has a rough go of it sometimes. The Frightened condition applied by Kethric's Dreadfall aspect will now correctly end if the combat with Kethric ends before the condition does. Improve combat AI pathfinding through dangerous surfaces and through steep terrain. Increase the number of valid methods of knocking Minthara out to recruit her. Okay, that's interesting. So, for those of you who don't know, there is a way to get Minthara into your party without sacrificing the Grove. But players went to some pretty extreme lengths to do this in previous patches, including things like polymorphing Minthara into a sheep and all sorts of wild things. I might do a video on that alone at some point because it's kind of an interesting topic, how that whole thing has progressed, but I'm interested to see how this plays out in the new patch as well. Halsin no longer blames the goblins for his death in his Speak with Dead dialogue if he managed to get killed much later on. Fixed a case where the lance board scene between Raphael and Mole would never trigger because of the script being too defensive when checking Raphael's current in-game state. You can finally tell Halsin that you found that letter that was sent to Kaga. That's cool. Shout out to the Shadow Druids. Will react accordingly if you fail to save Ravengard from the Iron Throne when the pact with Mizora is broken. Larian's also made some additional changes to various endgame scenes. When faced with certain choices after the Netherbrain is defeated, you can now tell Lae'zel to make her own decision. Also, added additional Avatar Karlach and Avatar Astarion reactivity within God Gale's dialogue in the epilogue, allowing them to request a cure for their conditions. So I'm curious to see if he'll actually grant that. Added some new lines to Minthara's epilogue dialogue to account for different paths where the player character has partnered up with her. Added some extra narrator lines for the Dark Urge when interacting with Gortash in his office. Shout out to my Dark Urge players out there. Added new dialogue and reactivity for Lae'zel regarding the Githyanki egg from Kresh Yalek. If Gale is a Mind Flayer in the endgame when returning to Elysium with Mystra, she will now transform him back into a human. So, Gale seems to have a way to weasel out of everything, doesn't he, man? Rephrase some journal entries to account for NPCs being knocked out instead of killed. If you're romancing Shadowheart in Act 2, she'll have more banter as you're walking around, so that's cool to see. Yeah, on my first playthrough, I did the Shadowheart romance, and it kind of goes from 0 to 100, I would say. Like, you spend a lot of time, like, building this relationship with her, but it's still kind of, like, platonic in a lot of ways. But then you get into Act 3, and it's like, all right, we're getting it on. We're going to be together forever. You can now give Shadowheart a hug when she's crying after losing or saving her parents. Now, my question is, can you also opt to not give her a hug like Tali in Mass Effect 2? Gale can now kiss your hand if you agree to marry him. This scene was also improved with the new intro and outro. Added a new version of the kissing scene with Astarion after he ascends. Fixed Gortash's Speak with Dead dialogue missing its VO. And then we got another few things in here. So I would say those are the most significant like content and UI changes. A lot of the rest of this document is just going to go over various bug fixes, but I will also put a link to the patch notes down below because this video is already getting kind of long if you want to check them out yourself. So what do you think about patch 6? Are you going to be playing it this weekend? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to Big Dan Gaming for more BG3 and RPG videos. Big shout out to all the channel members for supporting my content. Until next time, this has been Big Dan. I should go.